My name is James Davies and welcome to Photo Chat Vlog on YouTube. Well, here is my desk, where there are remnants of art projects and a Mewtwo camera. This is the same camera, an Olympus Mewtwo or Stylus Epic, that I talked about in episode 3 of season 2 of Photo Chat Vlog. But in this episode, I'll be talking you through some of the photos that I got back from my first roll of film that I ran through it. Now, I'm happy to report that the camera appears to work really well. The main points are that the exposures seem good, the focusing works out, and there are no light leaks, and the camera seems reliable. Now, these would be good enough to deem any new camera test a success, but the added advantage of this one being a Mewtwo really sweetens things, because it's just such a cool camera. So if they say the proof of the pudding is in the eating, then perhaps the proof of the camera is in the photos. But either way, I did run a roll of Agfa Vista Plus 200 through it, and I did get the negatives back and a CD of scans. Now, if you're a regular viewer of these videos, you'll know I only tend to discuss 3 pictures at a time. But today, we've got 12. So let's get straight to it and check out some of the more interesting photos that came out of that first test 24 exposure roll. So the first image was literally the first image off the film, and it was taken out in some woods in Milton Keynes. This was actually on the trip where I took my camera bag, which I described in season 2 episode 6 of Photo Chat Vlog. I had literally loaded the CD up on the computer and I just saw this shot and I thought, this is cool. This is as cool as the place looked in the first place, which was what inspired me to take the photo. There's a crispness to this that is really nice. The Agfa Vista Plus colours are nice and they render all of the colours of winter, and it just looks like I wanted the scene to look. If there's any poetry to this image, it is purely in the location, and all the camera is doing is faithfully rendering it, which is a good start for a test roll, testing out a camera. The second photo was taken later in the afternoon in the city of Milton Keynes, and though it's a bit grim looking, it really looks exactly like the afternoon on which I took it on, which has to be said was a classic winter afternoon in the UK, with this light grey all over cloud and rather bleak look. I look at this picture and I'm reminded of how cold it was and how we wanted to get into the warm and have a coffee. So why would I bother taking a picture of something like this? Well, I just did, you know. I was trying to give the camera a good workout and I'm happy at the way it looks. And amongst other things, it's in focus and it has a total absence of light leaks, which is good for an old Mewtwo that cost me £5. Incidentally, if you've never visited Milton Keynes, especially if you're not a resident of the UK, look it up on the internet. It's a really interesting city. And the next one is on a similarly overcast, grey winter's day. But this one is in a place called Edge Hill in Warwickshire. I had done an early 2018 bicycle ride up there, which is a fair old whack from where I actually live. And I brought the little Mewtwo with me because it's so wonderful and compact. And when I go cycling, I don't like to carry a whole bunch of stuff around with me, and I could pop this in and out of my pocket of my cycling jacket really easily. I'm just so happy with this picture. Again, it reminds me of what that day was like. I also remember standing near this field. It's one of those things, if you ride a bike, you can pedal your bicycle so far to a point, and then to manoeuvre close to certain things you have to kind of straddle it and waddle about if you want to stay standing on the bike, and hope that, if you're a man at least anyway, you don't get your sensitive manly parts squished onto any bits of it. So I remember standing there and trying to take a picture and trying to hold up the bike, and it was all a bit of a faff. But evidently it was worth it, because it doesn't get much more countryside-y than what you can see, really. So here is another picture up near Edge Hill. So this folly-type construction caught my eye as I was riding around the village, and I stopped and took a picture of it. Again, I'm struck here by how the camera is old, but the picture it's taken looks as fresh as a daisy. It looks as if I'm getting my pictures back for the first time, having brought this camera brand new. So I'm very pleased with this. It looks nice and crisp, and whilst it may not be the greatest picture in the world, other people might have framed it better, for example, so that the spire was in the centre or something, what I was keen to include was that road sign on the left. And again, I was sat on the bike and juggling all of that, so I didn't exactly have the mobility that you might have if you're on foot. Now, the beautiful thing about the right-hand side of the picture, of course, is it's all trees, and trees are such wonderful, non-geometric and random-shaped things. So although their shape makes perfect sense to being a tree, there are obviously no verticals or horizontals going on them, which makes a problem composing a photograph. They just do their tree-like thing. So I could focus on getting the left-hand side of the picture the way I wanted it, and I just left the right hand side to what it was, leaving it to chance, I guess. There's also a nice vitality to that green lawn. This is the final picture from the trip into Warwickshire by bike, and this is heading back home. Now this is the countryside where Warwickshire meets Oxfordshire, and we have a line of trees and a hedgerow and a barn. Again, it shows that the camera was working, and I could just pull it in and out of my pocket, open it up, fire off a picture and shove it away again. Just exactly the way I want a compact camera to work. There's another thing that's interesting, because last summer I was in the United States and did a lot of cycling out there in Ohio, and this picture reminds me of the landscape out there, and how it's not dissimilar to the landscape out here. So I can actually look at this picture and be reminded of America, but I'm not just being reminded of it because I saw it in a film or I saw it in a book. I'm being reminded of it because I was there. That may not make sense to anybody. I kind of know what I'm talking about anyway, so I'm glad I took the picture. Now this picture was taken in Oxford, in a cafe called the George Street Social, and it was taken in February, so this is actually from this month, earlier this month. I wanted to test the camera's ability to take a picture in low light and how it focused in low light as well. So what I did here was, I was having a coffee with somebody one evening, and I opened the lens cover. I set the flash so that it wouldn't fire, and I put the self-timer on, and I put the camera on the edge of the table and pointed it at this stairwell. And I just squeezed the trigger, and I let it sort everything out. I let it sort out the exposure and the timing, and I just left it to the camera. So I'm really pleased with what it did. It did seem to know what it was looking at, and it seemed to know it was looking at the railings, and that's what I actually wanted it to focus on. So I'd done this literally by pointing the camera in that direction. With it being on the table, I couldn't get my eye down to the viewfinder very easily to do any kind of composition. So that was all left quite to chance, and it somehow turned out really well. The light has got that indoor warm light thing going on, and whilst the subject matter might not be particularly to everybody's taste, I like this picture because it shows exactly what I wanted to do, which was test the camera taking a certain type of picture. So it isn't just a photo, it's also a test result. Now this image is a similar kind of thing, and I actually did this by literally turning the camera about 40 degrees to the left and pointing it at a different part of the cafe, but I left the same settings on the camera. Now this picture, you might say, is spoilt a little bit because you can see a thing on the left hand side which is the back of a chair, and that does look a bit odd or out of place because it's kind of fuzzy. But at the same time I'm okay with it because I think we forget a lot of the time how our eyes actually work. So if you're blessed with good eyesight, and I have to say that I am, I don't really need glasses except for a bit of reading, and I am nearly 50. If you've got good eyesight, then your eyes are focusing all the time. You really don't realise it, but even if I'm just looking around this room right now, my eyes are focusing and zapping in and out, and there are things that I know are in my field of vision that aren't actually in focus. Now, they're not presented to me in quite the same matter-of-fact way as this picture presents them to me. So if I was actually back in this cafe, looking over at that side of the cafe, I would see that chair and it would be out of focus. And I'm okay with having that in this composition for that reason. I'm also okay with the fact that yet again, it was a prop it on the table, no flash, self-timer, do your thing, leave it going, and it worked. That's actually explained in Photo Chat Vlog Season 1 Episode 4, something I call the happy place feature of the Mewtwo, which is, I think, is this winning thing. It's this ability to do nice shots in low light. And what a better excuse than to show you this one, which is another example of exactly that. I took the camera out into the street in George Street in Oxford, and I was just walking on my way home, and I popped the camera onto some piece of street furniture and did exactly what I said before. Set the flash to off, set the self-timer to on, squeeze the shutter, and let it do its thing. So this is 200 ASA colour film, and the little Mewtwo drank in all the photons and really created for me a very pleasing picture. Yes, there is a bit of stuff on the right-hand side that isn't exactly welcome, some sort of wall and a bit of drain pipe, for example. But again, with this technique, it isn't always possible to actually compose something. I think I popped this on top of a bus timetable holder, so it was actually quite high in height to look through and compose stuff. But I like the picture anyway. There's also a little bit of a blurred man visible too, but again, I'm okay with that. That is a bit of nighttime street photography reality. So next up, not in the night time, is a picture taken in the morning at Banbury railway station. This is interesting because this is quite early in the morning and I used the flash. Now I would normally switch off the flash whenever possible, but I actually switched it on deliberately this time because I was pointing the camera in the direction of the sun and I wanted a bit of fill-in flash. And these are the kind of signs which I knew were going to pick up the flash nicely and reflect it back. It does remind me of street photography in a strange way, because even though this isn't a street and it's lacking some of the key features of street photography, which is people, but one of the other features of street photography is people not posing and just doing their thing. And in a strange way, this sign is not posing and it's just doing its thing. And with the flash bursting into it, I kind of think it looks a bit like street photography with no people in. Not on a street. I don't know if anybody else will feel this way. Again, I'm just actually happy that this picture turned out well because I was testing the features of the camera and I'm really happy with what I got. There are some bits of it as well that I don't think I was aware of at the time but turn out to be quite pleasing, like some aeroplane trails in the sky that are really quite nicely leading us into the middle of the picture. And of course, you can't really go wrong with pictures of railway tracks because they're always leading somewhere as well. Now, you may have seen these rental bikes in your part of the world. I've heard that they are quite predominant in large British cities. This is Oxford, and these bikes are everywhere. There's different varieties of them. There are green ones and yellow ones, and there are actually some different ones in the next picture. And these ones were just sat there, and I took the picture. But there is one interesting thing happening in this photograph as well. It's not quite apparent as it will be in the next one, but in the UK, there is a famous collection of chocolates that you can buy. They come in a big tin, and the chocolates are called Quality Street. And my favourite Quality Street chocolates are the orange ones. They're milk chocolate, and inside the milk chocolate is an orange flavoured fondant. So the orange ones come wrapped in orange cellophane. And when I took this picture, I put the flash on, and I held the orange Quality Street cellophane over the flash. This is a feature that's actually built into some of the Lomo cameras. I think they've got one called Colour Splash or something like that. But I did this myself, and what you can see if you look closely is that the reflectors on the bicycles, and a little bit on the cement mixer driving past on the left, and on the wheels of some of the bikes in the distance, they've all got these orange highlights. And that's a result of these things reflecting back the flash as it went off, and adding in this little happy citrus highlight to these photographs. There's also a brown car on the right, and if you look behind that, right on the other side of the road, there are all these orange dots. And they're the white reflectors on the front of the bikes on the other side of the street picking up that orange flash. Now that is some distance in bright sunlight for that flash to reach and bounce back off those reflectors and come back into the little Mewtwo. So I'm really pleased with this picture. Again, it doesn't win any rewards in terms of just about anything really, but as a test picture it fulfills what I wanted to achieve in my own tasteless and ignorant way. So what I actually did next after taking that picture was that I walked over to the other side of the road and I took this picture. And it's some of the different types of bikes that are hanging around, and you can really see here with that same orange flash technique how it's interacting with those bikes. The tyres have got a high-vis white reflector strip on them, so you get the naturally lit bikes by the daylight, and then there's this happy highlight on them, and they look like the bikes of Tron. Again, on the left, on that green bike, you can see where the reflectors on the pedals and on the wheels have picked up the orange flash going off. But elsewhere, there's just normal things happening in a really busy part of the city with lots of traffic everywhere. Now, none of these images have gone live yet to anything like Flickr or Instagram, and I might crop this one a little bit if I'm going to put it on any kind of social media sharing. But you can definitely see here how that flash colouring technique worked out. And the final picture was taken in Oxford outside the Royal Oxford Hotel, which is right near to where all these bikes are. And I just noticed it as I was crossing the street. Now, if you were to pan down, this is like a doorway, like a reception doorway into the hotel, and this canopy is for you to be able to stand outside when it's raining whilst waiting for a taxi or something like that. The day I took the picture, it was a nice sunny day, with lots and lots of nice bright sunshine, a really crisp winter day, and it was one of those days where after all the drag of bad weather in January, I was really happy to see a bit of optimism of spring. So I was able to snap this picture, and I got it fairly good in terms of composition. You know, things are more or less in the middle, and in truth, it was actually difficult to line every single thing up. What's not apparent here is just how close some of the traffic was to me. And I didn't exactly want to put my life at risk for the sake of a very unpopular YouTube channel that's about stuff that's only of interest to film nerds. But I am pleased with how this worked out. I could have spent ages trying to get it so that the words Royal Oxford Hotel were perfectly lined up with the glass canopy. But instead, I think it gives you some sense of when you wander past somewhere and you notice a particular thing about it. And again, I love the colours. This is what the colour of this building looks like, and the colour film has done a really nice job of it. The camera has also exposed it really nicely, it focused it nicely, there's no light leaks. This is really what the Mew 2 is all about for me. I mean, I started my serious film adventuring in the early noughties, around about 2003, and I was looking for that elusive, fuzzy, wobbly Lomo moment back then. But actually the Mew 2 is one of those cameras, along with my Olympus OM10, where I actually love how crisply it renders reality. And when you've got a camera that can be as sharp as this if you want it to be, then it's a whole different world to the fuzzy land of Lomo. But that said, both worlds are great to explore. So, those were the test results for the camera, and it's definitely a keeper, as far as I'm concerned. It has a lot of potential, in fact, and I really hope it's going to be used a lot in 2018 by me. And that might actually be a thing that I'm going to vow to do right now. To take it with me as many places as I can, and to try a variety of films in it as well. So remember, if you like this video, or you've got something to say, leave me a comment below. That's all for now. See you again soon in another episode of Photo Chat Vlog.